Have you ever had that experience of dreaming of a loved one who has passed and feeling like your dream is real? That you've had an actual visit with that person. Some of you have told me you've had experiences like that, and it's happened to me several times. Soon after my dad died, I woke up from a dream one morning sure that he had been with me. Same with my grandmother. After her death, I could feel her warm presence in dreams for months, even though I was far away in Korea when she died. And my favorite aunt and friend, who passed away in 2017, for the first few years after she died, whenever I felt uncertain or sad, I could hear her whispering in my ear words of deep comfort. Over and over again, "You're all right, you're all right." It felt like Jesus and Beth. And then at a family wedding just this past November, her daughters said that in the words that I spoke in the marriage ceremony, they heard her voice coming out of my mouth. They could feel so strongly her presence there. A little different, but what about this? On a hike, have you ever reached a gorgeous, mist-shrouded, high-up place and felt the presence of something more, as close to you as your own breath? The very air around you, densely inhabited by the holy. In Cape Town once, I was climbing Table Mountain and entered an area thick with fog. I couldn't see a thing, so I just stayed very still, obviously, because I didn't want to fall off Table Mountain. Frozen there, suddenly, a loud rush of wings and something that moved inches away from my face. It was a lost hang glider careening by. But I say a hang glider now, but at the time it felt for all the world like an errant angel. So maybe both. And one more. A few weeks ago, on my mini sabbatical, I was walking through Muir Woods near San Francisco, one of the last remaining coastal redwood forests. And there's a section there with a sign that basically tells visitors, "You can stop talking now." And we did. A hush fell as people walked through the forest. The hush amidst these giant, ancient redwoods looming kindly above us felt other and ancient and holy. All of the moments that I'm describing here, from dreams of loved ones to mystical places, I suspect you've had very similar experiences in your life. Moments when heaven touches earth and earth touches heaven. And in Exodus today, you heard Cole read about how heaven touches earth. And the story of Moses' trip up Mount Sinai to receive the tablets containing the Ten Commandments. A cloud wraps him up at the top of the mountaintop where he is sort of immobilized for 6 days. And then on the seventh day, God calls him out of the cloud and then ignites the mountaintop in fire. This is a story of wonder and awe, signaling the epic, if also shaky, beginning of a new relationship between God and God's people on a mountaintop. Mystics call places where heaven and earth meet thin places. And we often hear about the thin places between heaven and earth as somehow separated by a veil. And when King Solomon built the very first temple in Jerusalem, he made sure that inside the temple, a special curtain separated the main sanctuary from the Holy of Holies. And the Holy of Holies, that was the little room behind that curtain, behind the veil, which held the Ark of the Covenant, and the Ark of the Covenant held the stone tablets on which were written the Ten Commandments. So the most precious possession the people of God had, it was for them like a piece of God, a piece of heaven in that space behind the veil. Now, this past few weeks teaching our St. James school students about the temple, we used this big wooden model of Solomon's temple building itself, and they all watch as I slide the curtain into place and set a tiny little version of the golden Ark of the Covenant behind the curtain. And I explain how no one got to look behind that veil except one priest once a year on Yom Kippur. And they said, only one priest, only once a year? What about women? Could they go in there? Nope. And these students were indignant. They were shocked. Why couldn't the people have more access to their holiest place on earth? Great question. And now for us, the same question. Why can't we have ready access always to the divine, not just in those heightened moments of our lives, but always? Certainly, Jesus' friends and followers had ready access all the time to the divine because they had him. And yet, even Jesus' followers during his lifetime, the disciples, the crowds, had trouble grasping the truth of his divine nature. They saw him as an amazing man, certainly, but a man all the same, a human friend. It would have been such a stretch of the human consciousness for them to be able to hold on to the idea that he was indeed truly human, their human friend, and the Son of God. The idea that in him they were seeing God, that in him they were seeing heaven, Jesus as the thin place. How could they grasp it? Yet, in key moments in the Gospels, his true dual identity comes shining through, and today is one of those days. Transfiguration, as you remember, it's a complete change of form or appearance into the most beautiful and spiritual state, a metamorphosis, a supernatural change that glorifies or exalts. And this is what happens when Jesus, shades of Moses and Joshua going up Mount Sinai, takes his friends, Peter and James, our James, and John, to the top of Mount Tabor. And once there, we hear that he is transfigured before them, his face shining like the sun, his clothing dazzling white. Imagine the wonder and amazement of his friends, that what they must feel. And as if this weren't enough, Moses and Elijah show up and start talking to Jesus. And at this point, Peter says to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I'll make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." Peter must be thinking that this is the big moment when heaven and earth unite permanently and join, and he wants to nail it down. But while Peter is still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadows them, just like that cloud that wraps Moses up on top of Mount Sinai. And from the cloud, we hear in the story that a voice says, "This is my son, the beloved. With him I am pleased, well pleased." And then listen to him. Listen to him. Hear that? Witnessing Christ shining like the sun, Peter and James and John are being called by God not to build dwellings like a bridge to unite the 2 dimensions. No, but simply to listen. Listen to what? Jesus came to tell his friends, and by friends I also mean all of us, how to live as he lived. And that means to shine as he shines. Jesus calls us to look beyond the veil, and to see the glory in the world around us. Jesus calls us to look beyond the veil and to see the glory shining in others. And finally, to look beyond the veil and to believe that that glory is in each of us as well, to make peace with ourselves and see that we also shine like the sun, are shining now and will shine eternally. That is a lot of looking beyond the veil. That is a lot of unveiling for us to do. Late in Matthew's gospel, when Jesus is crucified, we hear that at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. And I've always heard that as a tragic and terrifying moment, but today I'm thinking about it differently, as a way of saying that Jesus' loving sacrifice has taken away any barrier, any veil between us and God. And if the barrier between our worlds truly has been lifted, has been taken away, then nothing can stop us from seeing God's presence in the world around us, in one another, and even in ourselves. We can have ready and constant access to the divine, always in dreams, yes, on mountaintops, of course, at family weddings, and in every other place and every other moment. When we're suffering, when we're rejoicing, we can see that the world is radiating holiness. The transfiguration is his ongoing, ours to hear and see. I'm going to end with a quote reaching back to the 1600s from Quaker George Fox, who said it so well. He said, "Walk cheerfully." And by cheerfully, he means with an open heart, not happy, with an open heart. Walk cheerfully through the world, responding to that of God in everything. Heaven everywhere. Amen.